สวัสดีค่ะเพื่อนๆมื้อนี้ข้าวคั่วค่ะไม่ให้กับข้าวค่ะมื้อนี้มัสมั่นมื้อนี้ลงมือฝีมือเชฟเดฟ
Okay, Sawadee everyone. We're here in our kitchen today, and we're going to try cooking something neither of us have cooked before.
Yeah no cook before
We're,
first time
we're going to try some Massaman curry.
yeah
Popular dish in America, in Australia, in New Zealand when you go to a Thai restaurant. And it's popular in parts of Thailand. Not so much where apple comes from in Isan.
yeah
In Isan, it's not as common a dish, but it's more prevalent in Bangkok and some of the other areas.
Yeah.
Because it's really a combination Thai-Indian dish. It's really, there's a bit of Chinese and Thai and Indian and other influences in Thailand. And this is kind of a combination of Indian spices, Indian elements that would go into a curry, and some of the classic Thai elements that go into a curry. But it's an easy dish for people that aren't used to Thai food or spicy food to get used to because it's not usually very spicy. It tends to be on the sweeter side, but it's got very complex flavors, and I love it. It's almost like the Thai equivalent of beef stew. It's like a comfort food, and it's really good. So we eat it a lot, but we decided we wanted to try and cook it. We've tried cooking some red curries and green curries and Penang curry.
yeah
And Apple cooks tanjur, and we cook lab mu, which is pork lob salad quite often, and we cook a number of other dishes, but we haven't done Massaman curry. So this is Massaman curry, Dave and Apple style, our first try. So we're going to walk you through it.
จริงมัสมั่นดีโอเค
Okay, so we're going to review the ingredients with you first. These are all going to be used at different times in the dish, but it will give you an idea of what goes into a Massaman curry. It's very complex and it's a lot of work to make it, so that's why people don't make it so often. There are some dried Asian chilies. They have a different flavor once they've been dried. So we do have some dried Asian chilies, and commonly the seeds are removed when you cook them in Massaman curry because the seeds are where most of the heat is. So these won't be quite as hot. There's a fresh chili, and it's not one of the small Thai bird's eye chilies, which are a bit hot. This is a bit of a, I call them a falang chili because they're a little bit bigger and not as hot. So that's for a garnish really at the end. It doesn't go in the dish or in the cooking, but the dried Asian chilies do. There's some garlic and some shallots. We're going to char those in the pan to give them a little bit of a smoky flavor in a minute. That's some galangal, which is kind of like, maybe you'd call it Thai ginger. It's got a unique flavor. It's kind of citrusy.
ค่ะ
Okay, that's the Thai name.
Thai name ค่ะ
Thai name ka, but it's not ginger, but it's called galangal, and it's common in Thai food. And that's grown from our own garden. So Farmer Ruai has been growing those in our garden. And that's the outside husks of the lemongrass, also grown in our garden. Beautiful lemony fresh flavor it gives to Thai food, common in a lot of Thai dishes. So that's from our garden. And those are the husks. They're very woody, and you don't usually eat them. They're peeled off the outside of the stalks, and we're going to use that to cook with the beef when it's cooking and braising for about 2 hours. And that's the cut up inside lemongrass. That's the little stalks that have been cut up. Those are going to go into the curry paste. We've got some cinnamon quills, some star anise, which is kind of a licoricey kind of flavor. There's some cans of coconut milk. There was one time in my life when I was in the Cook Islands, I actually made coconut milk and coconut cream from scratch by scraping out coconuts and squeezing the flesh and making coconut cream and milk. So I know what that's like, but no way we're going to do that to make this dish. So we get the canned coconut milk. There's some tamarind paste or some tamarind puree. Very kind of tart, sour kind of flavor that goes in a lot of Thai dishes. It's what makes pad Thai very common flavor that people like in pad Thai. That's used in this dish as well. Then there's some dry spices. I didn't mention the bay leaf. There's a bay leaf over there as well. Bay leaf is going to go in at one point. Then there's some dry spices. And I think in here we've got cumin or cumin, sometimes they call it here. Doesn't sound right for me to say it that way. We've got some ground cloves. We've got some nutmeg. We've got some cardamom. We've got some coriander, ground coriander. And I think that's cinnamon, ground cinnamon. So we have a cinnamon quill, but we're also going to use ground cinnamon. So all those spices will go in to making our Massaman curry. So now we're going to talk about how all those are actually used. Okay, the longest part of cooking Massaman curry is simmering the beef because we need to get that very soft and broken down. So usually you use a cut like chuck that has a bit of a ratio of fat and beef. If it's too lean, it isn't necessarily the best. So this is what they would call casserole beef or diced casserole beef, or usually a chuck cut would be the good one to make. So that's going to go in the pan. That's about a kilo or about 2.2 pounds of diced beef. And Apple's going to toss in, yep, go ahead, darling.
Yeah.
The lemongrass husks.
ลาเมนกาดหัวกิ้งไข่ค่ะเอาลงในเนื้อเลย
So that's
จ้า
going to go in there. And we're going to cover that
น้ำซุป
with beef stock. So the beef's going to simmer in lemongrass and beef stock. And it just need to put in just enough to kind of cover the beef. It doesn't have to be completely covered, just so it's peeking out of the top. And if there isn't enough beef stock, you could finish it off with a little bit of water, but you're going to cover it for the most part in beef stock. And we put that on the heat and we let that simmer for about an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours till the beef just gets to where it's kind of falling apart soft, or can pull it apart easily with a fork. So the next step is to get the beef going. So we're going to put that on the heat and get the beef simmering for about 2 hours. So check back with you soon.
โอเคได้เวลาขัวหอมขัวข่าขัวกระเทียมเลยจ้า
Okay, while the beef is simmering, we've got a very hot pan. Should be really a heavy-based iron skillet, but all we've got is some regular non-stick skillet. So getting a pan very hot. We're going to put in the shallots, the garlic, and the galangal in the pan. And we're going to char those. So this means we're going to try to burn them a little bit. We're going to get them kind of black. Now these are with the skins on, so the Charlotte would not enjoy this. But we're gonna put the shallots in and try to actually char the skin so it gets black, and then we're gonna remove them and remove the skin. So this is to try to get a little bit of a smoky flavor into the massaman. So we're gonna be charring these.
ขัวให้มันหอมจ้าขัวมันเหลืองมัน
Okay, that pan is smoking. You can see they're getting a little bit of char. A little bit of char on some of the garlic and the onions, but you really have to burn them a little bit. So you're actually trying to char them, and that pan is very hot and it's smoking. So we're charring the aromatics for the curry paste. So that baby's going. Okay, there's all of our charred aromatics. And we also charred the dried Asian chilies. And I just had to stop filming for a second ago because I started coughing really hard. Not because of COVID. But because when those chilies hit the pan and we scorched them, they really released some chili oil vaporized it into the air, and it really goes straight into your lungs and makes you cough. So we've charred the aromatics and the dried Asian chilies. That's the next step. All right, we're now going to take the dry spices for the curry paste, and we're going to put those in the pan and toast those. Not for long, definitely don't want to burn them. But it brings out the flavor, it releases some of the oils, and it gives it a different, again, kind of more smoky flavor if you char them. So those are going in the pan over not as hot a pan, a medium pan this time.
ขัวเครื่องให้หอมจ้าขัวให้หอมจ้าขัวเครื่อง
Okay, we've done a little prep ingredients on our curry paste, and because our galangal is so small from our garden, it's a bit of the literally white knuckling part of this thing was grinding the galangal on the grater to get this grated galangal. So I got it, but that was quite dicey. I made it with no bloody knuckles, luckily, but they were very hard to get on the grater. I can appreciate getting a slightly larger piece from the grocery store would be a little bit better in some ways. But we've got, all this is going to go into our mortar and pestle, our dried chilies, our grated galangal, garlic. We've peeled that, the charred garlic from the pan. We've peeled it, gave it a rough chop. Our shallots, charred shallots from the pan. We've given it a rough chop. Okay, we add our lemongrass, the tender lemongrass from the center of the stalk. We've chopped that up just about as finely as we could manage. And all those toasted dry spices that we had, that we toasted in the pan, all those are going to go in. And we're going to put in about 4 tablespoons of water just to give us a little bit of moisture in there. And we're going to ground this in the mortar and pestle by hand into a fine paste. Now this is the part that is really quite a bit of work. And if you had a food processor that you could grind this into a paste, that's what you'd do. But we don't have a food processor actually. We have a blender, which sometimes we use. For doing this kind of thing, but it really doesn't give you the same effect. And it is traditionally done in a mortar and pestle. It is the hard work way to do it, but we're going to give it a go. So we're going to do that magical thing that happens when you watch cooking videos, and that you're going to fast forward to this after it's been worked for a while, and my arms are screaming, and we'll see what kind of paste we've got working. So mortar and pestle time on the curry paste.
เป็นไงแล้วตำนะจ้าจัดการตำแล้วอ่ะตำให้มันแหลมมันหอม
Apple saw me flailing away with the mortar and pestle, and she pushed me aside and decided to bring the good big guns out because she's a professional mortar and pestle slammer. And we've got a stone mortar and pestle, but it's a bit small. This one's we have about 3 different size ones, and this one's clay with a wooden handle, but she thinks that's going to do the job. So she's working at it. You can see those massage muscles. Let's see you flex your arm, darling. Let's see those muscles. Let me see your muscle. Where's your muscle? She doesn't really know how to flex. She's got some muscles in there from doing massage. So she's working the curry paste. Smashing it down. Okay, so curry paste is on its way with Apple's help. She also abandoned the counter and is down on the floor because this is where she's most comfortable doing it. So this is how she'd normally do it when she's making papaya salad. She likes being down on the floor, so it's called getting down and dirty with the Massaman curry paste.
It's comfortable.
It's comfortable for her. Okay, not comfortable for me, but comfortable for her. So, all right, Apple's working it on the floor. Be back soon. Okay, we've been working the paste for maybe, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. So, and Apple's done a great job, way better than me. We'll take a look at this little bib on her. It's just a wet paper towel. Anybody who's never used that, when you're cutting onions, and there's those shallots that are in this curry paste, and when you have onions that you're cutting or anything that has aromatics, like there's a lot of strong aromatics in this, like those chilies, and they're actually making us cough and making our eyes water. So if you have a little towel, paper towel that you just wet from the sink and you hold in your mouth or you hang on your collar, it actually catches a lot of the vapor from the onion and keeps your eyes from crying. So that's an onion trick if anybody's never tried that one before. So here's the paste now, about 20 minutes later. It would be a little bit finer if it was in the food processor, but it's getting to that kind of chunky, pasty stage, and that will work. Our Massaman curry just might be a little bit more chunky than usual, but that's quite doable and quite usable, and we just can't blitz it in the food processor and get a completely smooth paste, but that's an awesome job with a lot of elbow grease from Apple, and that's what our paste looks like now. So we'll now move on to the next step. Okay, we're at a point where the beef is done cooking. You can look at the bowl over here. The beef is done cooking, and we've taken it out of the pot. We have some cooking liquid left from the beef. It's waiting. Take the phone, darling. And in the pan, we're now going to cook the curry paste. So this is the paste. Get your finger. There you go. This is the paste that Apple pounded in the mortar and pestle. So we're going to put that in the pan. And we're going to cook the curry paste. This is what you do with any classic curry when you do it from scratch. You take all the time to make that curry.
คั่วเครื่องให้มันหอมจ้า
And then you make this curry paste, and now we're going to cook out the curry paste. So this only takes a couple minutes, but we're going to cook the curry paste in the pan.
ขั่วเครื่องให้มันหอมจ้าหอม
Get some great smells. There's been great aromas and great smells coming out of all these things we've done, both the fresh spices and curry paste mix. But now that it's cooking in the pan, we're getting a whole bunch of aromas out of the pan as well, which is what you always hope for with a great curry. So cooking the curry paste out for a couple minutes. Okay, we've cooked out the curry paste, and now we're adding the coconut milk. And I've kind of increased the recipe a little bit. I haven't quite doubled it, but I've increased the, so you're only supposed to put in 1 can of coconut cream, but I'm going to put in a little bit more because I've added a little bit more beef.
ใส่กะทิลงไป
Now we're incorporating the curry paste and the coconut milk. So we stir that and let the coconut milk, sorry, it's not actually coconut cream, it's coconut milk. But let it incorporate with the curry paste. So we cooked the curry paste out, and now we're letting the coconut milk incorporate. Now we get the smell of the coconut, great sweet smell of the coconut.
Yeah, smell หอม
breaking down the curry paste, and just going to incorporate that for a moment. Okay, we've got the curry paste mixed in with the coconut milk. We're now going to add in the star anise, the cinnamon quills, bay leaf, and the reserved beef braising liquid, which is kind of concentrated beef broth with whatever juice came out of the beef. Now we're going to stir all that together, bring it up to a simmer for about 3 minutes. Okay, we're going to add in some fish sauce. So fish sauce is on almost every Thai dish that you can think of, and it does smell very fishy, probably more fishy than most Falang would actually like. And it used to put me off, but I really learned that it really, if you don't put it in, it just is a really missing flavor that just is not there. So it's roughly about a teaspoon plus maybe a little bit of fish sauce. And it adds mainly a salty flavor, it's kind of like using soy sauce. And I'm going to add about a teaspoon of tamarind paste. Tamarind's kind of a
มะขาม
looks kind of like a
น้ำมะขาม
little bit of a sweet potato. It's kind of long and brown.
เปรี้ยว
Kind of like a root kind of thing. I don't know, maybe it's a fruit that grows in a bush or a tree, I'm not sure. But you can see it on the label. That's what tamarind looked like. Oblong, kind of little sweet potato yammy kind of things. And they add kind of a sourness or a tartness to a dish, but it's a real distinctive flavor. And we're also going to add in some sugar. Now you could add in white sugar, but the preferred thing in Thai cooking is palm sugar. So we had some palm sugar, and it comes in these little discs, and the discs were a little old and they'd gotten a little hard. So I kind of chopped up the palm sugar into little pieces and put it in a tiny bit of water just to soften it up. And although people try to be healthy and not put sugar in a lot of Thai recipes, it's an essential part of a lot of the recipes. You've got to have the sweetness and the sugar in there to help balance it out. It's not about adding tons of calories and simple carbohydrate. It is an important part of the flavor balance. And palm sugar is usually the preferred way to do that, but you can use regular refined white sugar if you need to. So we've added in the fish sauce, the palm sugar, and the tamarind, which helps balance out the sauce a little bit. And we're letting that incorporate.
น้ำมะขามเปียกน้ำตาลน้ำปลาค่ะคนให้เข้ากันสูตรเชฟเดฟ Okay,
all that's been incorporated. We're now going to add in potatoes. These are Originally, the recipe called for maybe 2 medium potatoes, and this is more like 4 because I've kind of increased the recipe a bit. So we're putting those recipes in the curry, in the sauce, and the starch from the potatoes helps the sauce thicken up a little bit. So we're going to bring those potatoes probably up to a little simmer, and they'll take maybe about 7 minutes to cook in the curry sauce. So we're going to cook the potatoes for about 7 minutes. Okay, the potatoes have been cooking for a while. I think that's probably been about 10-12 minutes till they've started to soften a little bit. So the potatoes are softened. Now I'm adding the beef back in. So this is the beef that got cooked before. It looks a little dry sitting in the bowl, but it's still pretty juicy. And tasted the beef, and it's actually tastes really good. Cooked in those lemongrass stalks and beef broth. That's all they were cooked in. There was no seasoning, just beef broth and the lemongrass stalks. The lemongrass has a really nice taste with the beef. So that's one of the tricks to this recipe, is actually boiling or cooking the beef in beef broth with the lemongrass stalks. So now you just incorporate the beef back in with the curry. You let it simmer for a while to just soak up all the flavors and incorporate together. And we'll give it a taste in a little bit, and we'll balance out the taste. So a lot of Thai dishes are really a balance of salty, sweet, and sour. So we'll give it a taste, and if it needs a little bit more salt, we'll add a little more fish sauce. If it needs a little more sour, we'll add some more tamarind paste. And if it needs a little more sweet, we'll add some more sugar. So we'll give it a balance, and that'll thicken up a little bit. That sauce is getting pretty thick as it is, but with the beef added back in, it will thicken up a little bit more. And we'll be ready to dish up. So we'll balance out the dish and get it ready to serve up soon. Okay, Massaman curry all done. We're gonna dish it up. That's turned out just about how we'd want with the thickness. We've cooked up some jasmine rice, and we're putting the Massaman beef and potatoes over some jasmine rice. And smells very good.
Yeah, น่ากินมาก
We had a tiny little taste, and it tastes very good. But I think it's a little more spicy than Massaman beef normally would be. Those little chilies that I had were Asian chilies, were quite hot. And I think they were more like little Thai bullet chilies. And that's not nothing wrong if you like it spicy, but Massaman beef is not normally super spicy. It's more wan, or sweet. Wan would be how you say sweet in Thai, so it's usually more wan.
Yeah.
Gonna put some of this gravy over the top.
น่ากินค่ะน่ากิน
And it's really unusual to describe the flavor of Massaman. It's got, you know, all those spices that we put in. It's got a lot of
สูตรเชฟเดฟค่ะ
rich aromatic spices,
น่า
and
กินมาก
it's very, very good. So we're gonna
Yeah.
sprinkle with a little bit of fresh coriander, or cilantro, as you would call it in the United States or America. So here they call that cilantro, or here they call it coriander. There you call it
ผักชีหอม
cilantro.
จ้า
We're gonna put on a little bit of fresh chili.
พริกสด
It's already pretty spicy, but you almost put fresh chili on top of almost everything you cook in Thai food. And the rule in our household is to use the big red chilies. I can handle the big red chilies pretty well now. I usually take out the seeds. And Apple likes the little Thai bullet chilies. They're a lot harder. And some roasted salted peanuts on top.
Peanut.
That's the other thing you tend to put on top of a lot of Thai food, pad Thai, other things like that. And
ถั่วกั่ว
we will do another thing you do on almost all Thai dishes, a little squeeze of fresh lime on top of
ใส่หมกนาวค่ะเรียบ
the
ร้อยแล้ว
Massaman beef. So for the video, I'll now taste the Massaman beef.
yeah
Okay, so here we go. Little Massaman beef, some rice, a little bit of chili and coriander.
อร่อยไหม
Aloy ma.
อร่อยมาก
That is pretty good. Better than I thought it was going to be. For our first go, that's a delicious massaman. It's a lot of work, a lot of labor involved, but it does taste different than what you get out of the can or out of the packet when you make a curry. Getting a little bit of the heat now, back of the throat. It's a little hotter than I'd probably want my massaman to be. I think of it as being more of a sweet dish, but I think that's what a lot of the Australian and American restaurants do with massaman. They up the sugar content and it's a lot more of a sweet dish, but this is spicier than it should be. Still good though, wonderful flavors, great depth of flavor. So very happy. Hope you enjoyed watching how we cooked our first Massaman beef curry, and I hope you give it a try sometime. So, kapkun maka.
Thank you for watching Thank you ขอบคุณค่ะขอบคุณเพื่อนๆค่ะไปกินกันค่ะ Let's go to eat Thank you ขอบคุณค่ะ